We have to be very creative in the way we preserve our history. So we've written a book and we go into the schools and we do programs and we have exhibits at the library, a great partnership. And when a corporation like Wells Fargo Bank comes along and offers to do a project like this, it's a tremendous benefit to the city.
Wells Fargo is committed to telling these stories and connecting really our communities together. With mural projects like this one right here in Pinole. We have these murals that display throughout the Bay Area and throughout the country where the customers can really connect with the communities that they live in.
On this mural is a cornucopia of images which will take people essentially from 1772 to the middle of the 20th century. In 1772, the Spanish explorer Pedro Fages encountered the Native Americans making a sort of gruel that they called pinole, and that is how Pinole got its name. Pinole really started its modern history around 1823. A Mexican military man, Ignacio Martinez, built a spectacular homestead out in the valley. In the late 1800s, Bernardo Fernandez was a shipping magnate.
Bernardo Fernandez was my great-grandfather. He migrated from Portugal, Porto, Portugal, when he was 13. He sailed the world. In 1852, he landed in San Francisco, the same year that Wells Fargo began. It was just a little after the gold rush. He built a home. And so he was kind of the catalyst behind getting it established as a solid community.
Bernardo was an amazing businessman. There was a wharf and warehouses filled with grain.
And then the railroad came through, which just clinched the deal.
Pinole was a bustling, thriving business community. Bernardo Fernandez's son, Manuel, was the doctor in Pinole for almost 50 years.
He was the physician for California Powder Works.
They manufactured most of the dynamite that was used by the Allied Expeditionary Forces in World War I and employed most everyone in Pinole. There were a lot of explosions. And then more recently, there are images of Pinole, say in the 1920s or the 1930s. Francis Ellerhorst was the icon of education in Pinole. Francis was the principal of the Pinole Hercules School for about 40 years. Everyone knew her. She was one of the most respected people in the city, and she lived a very long time. I think she was 94 years old when she passed.
My father was Big Red Lefevre, and he was very much a man's man. He was a sportsman, and he was a community man.
He was a mover, a shaker. He loved baseball, and if we had people here that could play baseball, he would form a team.
Pinole was a lot of the Portuguese families, Irish, English, and the Pinole Merchants was one way of bringing all those people together. It wasn't the Catholics, it wasn't the Protestants, it was total baseball.
After church, everybody would go to the ballpark and watch the game. But they were very successful, and they were always one of the teams to beat.
One of the other images on the mural is of the Pinole Fire Department. Around 1950, Wallace Martin, also known as Pepper Martin, the first paid fire chief in Pinole. Just by looking at this mural, someone can get a really good idea of what's happened in Pinole over the last 150 years. Generally, the cycle of life in Pinole in the first half of the 20th century went like this. Dr. Fernandez delivered you, and you went to school at the Pinole Hercules School No. 1, where most likely you were taught by Francis Ellerhorst. You married the girl next door. You worked at the California Powder Works.
There was big Portuguese fiestas in the 40s and 50s. I remember being in the parade when I was a little girl.
The people here were extremely friendly. They knew who you were.
This is the kind of community where you know your neighbors.
Everybody was related. All my cousins were there. Everybody knew everybody.
It's a little slice of Americana.
The mural is a beautiful thing. It's a visual of the history.
The fact that Wells Fargo is honoring my father's way is really tremendous. He was bigger than life, and this just puts an exclamation point on it.
How did this place start? Who are these people? What went on to get to this point? And murals do that.
This will be a history tour stop.
We are so proud in relating our stories of our local communities. Kids really enjoy looking at these murals because there's so many ways they can connect with them.
Even for my grandchildren, they will look back and they'll be able to see that. And the history won't be forgotten.